In the last video we saw how to add an ASP.NET MVC Core web application to our solution where our console apps are at the moment, and we saw how to personalize the home page with using a Jumbotron. Make sure your name is in it. I've left the link into the Microsoft documentation on web apps, which could be useful. We've modified the tab. We haven't modified the footer yet, and we've put in some links here that they don't look like links. So I'm going to proceed from here. So let's make these links look like links. Now let's modify the footer. If you remember, we have a layout page which all views will use. So at the moment it just says 2021. I got the right layout page, hold on. Let me close, I've got too many pages open at the moment. I'm getting confused. So we've got our home page open, and let's now open our shared layout page. Yes, there's the web app's title. And over here in the nav brand, there's also, we've changed that to web apps. At the moment we only have two pages. We have a distance converter page we added last time, and a home page and index page. I think I'm going to change this. So we called it distance converter, but I think in the menus it might be better, in the menus, what the user sees would be better as just APO2 or APO1. So just to make the menus easier, I'm going to change that to APO1. And then the footer is down here. It's got a link to the privacy page. Now you can see that's how in ASP.NET you do links. You don't need, these are called tag helpers, because they start with ASP dash. And we don't need areas. That's an extra level we can have. You do need the name of the controller and the name of the action method. But in fact, we don't need this link. So I'm just going to take it out. But that actually shows you what an ASP link should look like. So if I copy that, but cut that out as there for the moment. Essentially that's what we want here for our distance converter page, that link there. So the action we want is called distance converter, I think. Okay, so it's going to look something like that for the distance converter. And we copy that link. We can make this one the BMI calculator. Which doesn't exist yet, never mind. So that's going to be APO2. Okay, so there's our links using the ASP controller and the ASP action names. We should yes, we've got to the distance converter page now. The BMI calculator doesn't exist. We'll sort it out later. But we still haven't finished the footer. Let's put some useful information in the footer. So what I suggest you do here is just have a series of things. Let's have university name, the module name, that would do for our footer. Probably not make it too long for a mobile view. And it is a bit too long, isn't it? So let's split it into 2 lines. So what we might do then is have the copyright notice and your name next to the copyright notice on one line, and on the other line we'll have the university and the module name. Now we want those on separate lines. I'm just going to do it the easy way. Put a line break in there, and I want this centered. And I'm going to do text center. Yeah, that looks a bit better. Now we've got our links there. I think that'll do me for the home page. It can be more sophisticated than that if you want to spend the time, but the basic functionality will do me. I couldn't resist tarting it up a little bit, so I've added some buttons instead of links, and I've shown different colours. I've also got the Jumbotron working. I'd forgotten, if you look at the code here, to put the word Jumbotron in there. All I had was justify content center. So it's just a little grey box, just to make it stand out a bit more. And then to get the links, change the links into buttons, you just use the class btn and then choose one of the btn colours, information, success, or warning. So that's all I've done. These are the 3 apps we are going to provide a web front end to. We won't be able to do it to the other 3. So there's only 3 we want. And the easiest one to do is the BMI calculator. So I'm going to do that one first, then the distance converter, and finally the student marks example. If you want to go a stage further and have images, then please use the www.root folder and put an images folder in here and add your images in there. Because this www.root is for all your static web files, your JavaScript, your CSS. And if you look in here, you can see you've got your Bootstrap and jQuery. So I'm going to add another action method to our home controller. So I'm in the home controller. So I've added another action result called BMI Calculator, and we may as well add one more for the student marks. Now you may be aware that these are views, and that's why I'm breaking the standard convention for method names, which is to have a verb. Because they're views, essentially these are display distance converter, display BMI calculator, display student marks. But because they are views, I'll allow you to use nouns instead of verbs for the names of these views. And to add the view, go to what we did before, right click, add a view. It's a razor view. So that's the BMI calculator's view. And all we'll do for the moment is just have the heading. And we'll go back and add another view for the student marks program. So I'm right clicking inside the view, inside the action method to get a razor view. And we can just check that they work. Okay, and as I say, I'm going to close everything but the BMI calculator now. and the home controller. We don't need the layout page anymore, or the index page. So let's think about the BMI calculator page. So what I've done now is standard HTML5. So we have a header, a jumped on header with the name of the app and the name of the author, a short description of the app. Then in the section we've got a form with method is post, which we're going to post this results of this form back to the controller. We then split it into two sections, getting the user's height, getting the user's weight, and they're much the same. A prompt first asking them to enter it in whole numbers, so either feet and inches or centimetres, and the same with weight. And then finally at the bottom there is a button there. So you can see this is what it looks like. The placeholder is a good way of avoiding having to use a label for every text box, and the fact that they are type equals number means I can't enter. If I try to type letters on, they're not accepted. I put numbers in. I can put a decimal point in, but I think it'll object to that. Yes, it does. So it does check that it's an integer number that's been entered. So the use of placeholders is easier. I'm going to set values in a minute, I'll show you why. But otherwise that's standard HTML at this point. And clicking on the calculate does nothing, even if the numbers are valid. Nothing happens yet. We now have an HTML view. We have no connection to the BMI calculator. So what I've done here is to add it. It's referred to as @model, and it's using the console apps app02 BMI calculator. That links us to the BMI calculator, which is going to supply and receive data. Before we can do that though, we do need to refactor the BMI calculator, which is here. I've already done the refactoring. I have changed all the private attributes, these ones here, to public attributes. That involves a name change. So it was private double kilograms with a small k. It's now been changed into a public double kilograms with a capital K, because it's now a public property, not a private attribute. So when you do that, if you have to change the name or anything like this, you must use the rename, because the rename will look for the same change in all the files you're referencing. So please always use rename when you change the name of variables or methods or classes. So I have made all these attributes in the BMI calculator. I've made them public, and they've got get and set methods. Those get and set methods are standard methods. Get returns a value, set sets a value. It's a C# syntax, which I think is really very neat and simple and easy to use. But bear in mind there is no data validation in that. So if somebody sets a value to stones of minus 5,500, there'll be no check on that. That's what the first thing you have to do. Now that gives us access to the data inside the BMI calculator. But we don't only need the data, we need the results of the calculation as well. So if you look down here, you will see that the calculate method returns a value to the index, and the index is public. So if we call on the calculate method, and again the calculate methods are now public, then you can look in the index for the answer. But we also want the printout. So for example, here we want a health message. Now typically you might have used write-lns, console write-lns here to write this message out, but that then wouldn't be usable by the web page. So instead, my get health message returns a string. So it uses a string builder, puts a new line in, then appends the message, and at the end of the method returns the message to a string. That way it can be used by the console app program, if I can find where it's used. There it is. That's where I'm writing out the health message using a method now, call, which returns a string, so that the web page can also get that string, get the health message as a string and get the BMI message as a string. Those are all the changes you need. We now need to hook it in, and we hook it in by using a tag helper. The tag helper is ASP4, and when you do that, you can access the model with a capital M, and you should then see, why is it not showing me? Oh, sorry, we're in C# now, so we have to use @ model, and then you can see all the properties that are available from our BMI calculator model. So here I want the feet, don't I? So I want the feet. I want this input to be linked to the model.feet. So each of the text boxes is now linked to the model. I've also given them a value. This is for testing purposes, because I don't want to have to keep typing them in every time I test the web page. So I put a value in, default value in there and here. Okay, so the web page is now bound. I think the technical word is bound. You have data binding. So we have bound the web page to a data model. Here is a data model. The data model is coming from a different project, but you can also put models directly into the models folder, but we haven't done that. There's our models folder. I showed you it earlier, it's empty at the moment. So instead of using models in a models folder, we're using models from another project. Okay, so that is now all hooked up. It won't run any differently now. I'll run it. Okay, so you can see the default value is 60115 there, and I can just click on calculate, and again nothing happens yet. One minor thing, I folded these lines over because they were getting too long. I regard that line as too long. I know you can see it all in this large window on a high definition screen, but if it was printed out, typically you don't want lines going on much beyond here-ish. So fold them over and indent them in so you can see that they're part of that line. Now back in the controller, it is the BMI calculator method that will call that view for display purposes. But the method on the form is post. Typically HTML works with a get and a post. This essentially is the get, and you can annotate this with an HTTP get. Okay, but when they click on the submit button, we want them to come back to a post method. Has the same name, but instead of get, it's going to be annotated with post. So it'll be our post method. Now you can't have two methods which have the same name and the same parameters. But what we want in here is all the data that's been from the web page. So what we're going to do, we take out these unused usings. What we want to do is link ourselves to our BMI calculator. So that's our console app project, app02. Okay, so I've added using the console apps project app02. I didn't need to put the BMI calculator bit on. And I've added the BMI calculator as a parameter to the post. Oh, wrong one. That should be in the post method. That's the get method. We need it in the post method. Okay, and all I'm going to do at the moment in the post method is put a breakpoint so we can see whether this works or not. Okay, so I'm going to run it now. Okay, so if we look at the BMI calculator, there it is, and you can see it has 11 stone, 5 pounds, 6 feet and no inches. All the data is sitting now in the BMI calculator object, ready to be used. So just to reiterate, I put a using of the console app project's app02 namespace, and I've added a second calculator method which returns a view. One is labelled HTTP get, the other is HTTP post, and the post one returns the calculator. I've now added a final method. It's called health message, and it's going to return a view. The view doesn't exist yet. Actually, we can have an empty razor view, can't we? Oh, right. That's why it doesn't work so well. We just do razor view. It gives us a name, which is the one I want. But we want it to be empty. I don't understand that. Anyway, there we go. Okay, and we've got our web page. Okay, I'm going to just put the HTML in now. I had a page I'd done earlier, as you probably noticed. Okay, now in this case, all we want in this page is the index value itself. So the model is just a double number, which is the BMI index. But we're going to create a new calculator here so that we can pass the index to the calculator and get the appropriate message back. Okay, so it's a straightforward header. I'm using a Jumbotron now without centering. You'll see the difference in a minute. And all we need is some paragraphs. I'm not quite sure what formatting I want, but you can play around with that. And we need to print out the health message and the BAME message. Don't know why we've got that there. That's not right, is it? Okay, so that's now ready. Okay, so I've now added the code to the post BMI calculator post method. And here's where I decide whether they've used the imperial system or the metric system. So I look at this centimetre value. I believe there is no adult in the world who is less than 140 centimetres tall. So if I find that they put in a value for centimetres more than 140, then they'll be using the metric system. Else, if they put in a value for feet which is more than 4, and a value for stones which is greater than 6, they must be using the imperial method. But it is possible they've entered values which are far too small for any known adult. No, actually I haven't covered far too large, there's also a possibility they might have entered values far too large. I haven't covered that yet. Never mind. So if they do enter values which are too small, then the view, it will return to the view and ask again. Otherwise, we assume the values are alright, and we can set the BMI index to this local value. And then we want to go to the health message page. So we're going to redirect to action. We're going to this page here and passing it a new object which has the BMI index in it as a double number. So here we've got to have a double number. It could be called BMI index, but it could just be called index if you like. And here we're going to pass that index value into this health message view, because the health message view has a model which requires a single double number. And I'm hoping that might work. Let's give it a try. Yes, there we are. Okay, so the first message just says your BMI is, oh dear, 0. And then we've got the main message. Why is it 0? Because I've created a new calculator, passed the model, which is the double number we just worked out, into the index value. Can't see anything wrong with that. Oh dear, I thought we were there. Let's just put a breakpoint here. Let's just see. Okay, so here's our BMI calculator. Notice the index value is 0 at this point. If I step over, it's going to go and call on the calculate imperial. I'll step over that. Having done that, it should now have a BMI index. Yes, there's the BMI index of 21.56, etc. So if we step on, it's now going to redirect itself to, I wonder if the name has to be the same. I bet the name has to be the same, look. I thought you could get away with a different name. I think that might be my mistake. Let me try. Didn't seem to go to that method, did it? So I think, let me just stop and let me just change that to BMI index. And try again. I'm going to try that. Of course, the binding of the data to these variables depends on your choice of names, I think. It's worked this time, so the names have to be the same. And here's your health message. You're in the normal range. There's your jumbotron with left aligned text. I think I prefer the centered. And there's your main message in a slightly different font color, just for variation. And we've now completed the app, the mobile version of the BMI calculator. You need to take screenshots of these two web pages, making sure your name is on. If it's in the footers here, which mine is, look, I don't necessarily need it in the jumbotron and the footers, as long as it's clearly somewhere in your screenshot, please. So that completes the BMI calculator. I'll do another much shorter video on the distance converter, but it does have one feature we haven't covered yet, the distance converter. Otherwise the principles are much the same, but there's one difference, which is the use of drop-down lists.